Oh, we're recording now. Well, I was doing a
I'm so
centering.
sorry.
And that's okay. We're connecting with a sense of gravity and working on feeling the body firmly grounded in the chair. So if it's comfortable, you can exhale and feel the body supported by the seat of the chair, feet on the floor. And on the inhale, feel lift and length all the way up through the spine. And maybe explore that for a few more breaths, this feeling of grounding and connecting with gravity on the exhalation. And the inhalation lifting away, connecting upward to the sky. Just noticing how that feels. And take a deep inhale and a long, slow exhale. Coming back, opening the eyes if they were closed. Connecting back here at our virtual space. And since we just started the recording, I'll just say hello again, introduce myself. Again, I'm Jivana. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the founder of Accessible Yoga and excited to be here with you today to talk about chair yoga a bit and then do a practice together. And I recognize some of you, but it's nice to meet you, those of you that I don't know. And again, hello to any of you watching the recording. So let me share my screen. I have a few slides. I've tried not to overdo it, so I might have a few. A few slides. Here's the image we used for this webinar. Chair yoga is real yoga, which is kind of a funny thing to have to say, right? And I'm going to shift that maybe slightly to say, maybe not that chair yoga is real yoga, but let's look at how can we keep the yoga in chair yoga. And I think it's important to maybe look at how we differentiate chair yoga from maybe chair exercise or other practices that are done in chairs. And I am going to speak briefly about teaching mixed level classes as well. But I kind of just want to first get us grounded in like, what is chair yoga? Obviously, chair yoga is simply doing asana practice in chairs, but it also includes other kinds of practice. Like you could do pranayama, relaxation, meditation. Those practices, which are actually more accessible, can of course be done in chairs. I think we need to maybe step back and look at a question of what is yoga. In this picture, in this slide, I have an image of DeJour Jones, and she's sitting in a chair with her hands at her chest. Um, I think the question of what is yoga is huge, actually. And it's not like there's an easy answer to that. I mean, I could give you a bunch of different definitions, but I really think that there isn't one. I mean, we can define the word yoga, but I don't think there's really a definition for the practices of yoga. It's such a kind of rich tapestry of practices and history that goes back to South Asia and traditions that are thousands of years old and that are sometimes even contradictory. There might be different ways of defining yoga. There's non-duality as well as duality in the philosophy there. But I want to look at the philosophy just for a moment to maybe think about how we could look at what yoga is and what the role of asana or yoga poses are. And then specifically looking at the challenges and benefits of chair yoga and some cautions to be aware of when teaching chair yoga. So the question of what is yoga, where do we look for information? If you Google it, I Googled this a few months ago, and like, here's the images that came up. It's like, well, yoga is asana, I guess. And it seems like it's asana for people that can do really complex, big poses. And so it can be a bit off-putting if that's not something you're interested in, the body doesn't want to do it. If you have a disability or a larger body, or if you're older like me, I don't know, then maybe you don't want to do those things or can't. And yet yoga is still there for us. And I think there's just some confusion there. Asana is an amazing and important part of yoga, but there's really so much more. And I think the question is, what are some resources? What are some reliable sources? I don't know if Google is that. I mean, Google is great, but I think in terms of what is yoga, we might need to look back at yoga texts. And so I just want to mention a few. Personally, I like to reflect on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is, I think People challenge that, but it's still generally the main source of information about what yoga is based on philosophy. The Bhagavad Gita, of course, the Upanishads, which go back before all of the others, and even the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and then a bunch of new texts that are being translated these days into English, which is really great. I thought we could look at the sutras briefly and just look at, here's a picture of a statue of Patanjali, who's kind of this semi-god, or demigod, you might say, in the yoga tradition. And Patanjali, the sutras are a little controversial because some say that really they haven't been that popular all along, and they were more popularized in the last few centuries by a Western interest in yoga. But as I said, there's still some really powerful and beautiful teachings there that I think can give us insight into what yoga is and help us find these kind of common threads that go throughout all the yoga teachings. And of course, the sutras were written for monastics, right? People that were basically leaving householder life and dedicating themselves to spiritual practice. But again, I think there's a lot of great teachings here. But the most famous teaching from the sutras is Book 1, Sutra 2, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which I've just translated simply as stillness of mind is yoga, or peace of mind is yoga, which I think is a really nice thing to think about. That in a way, Patanjali is saying that working with the mind is yoga. And then he says in the next one, then we experience peace within, then we experience our true self. And Sutra 4, otherwise, we believe we are our thoughts. And I think those three sutras kind of summarize his main philosophy, this idea that we have this essential nature, right? That and I'd say this is probably true of almost all yoga traditions, that we have some essential true nature, some spiritual essence. You could call it Purusha or Atman, but we've kind of lost sight of it. And our challenge is that we've forgotten it, or there's some kind of ignorance of our spiritual nature. And instead we've identified with the mind and our ego and the body. And what the teachings tell us to do is actually to shift that identification from the part of us that is constantly changing and limited, which is the body-mind, to the part that's eternal, the unchanging spiritual essence. And so the sutras and in many ways the Gita, even the Upanishads, have that same theme of questioning our identification of who we are, and actually shifting from identifying as just the body mind to spirit. And I think that's something we can find. Well, let me keep going. So in the sutras, he goes on and talks about asana. I have a photo of a few copies of the Yoga Sutras just to show that it's great to look at different translations of these teachings, unless you can read the original text, which is fine, but translations are very different. And there's a section in the Yoga Sutras where he talks about asana, postures. And I think that can be really helpful if we're going to be practicing or teaching asana and looking at how to adapt to the chair. So here he says, Sutra 2, Book 2, Sutra 46, asana is a steady, comfortable posture, where Patanjali is basically talking about asana, which he presents as the third limb of Ashtanga Yoga, as a seated pose, right? It's a seat. It really means seat, actually. I mean, it's about taking a firm, steady seat for meditation. And then in Sutra 47, he says, by lessening the natural tendency for restlessness and by meditating on the infinite, posture is mastered, which I think is really beautiful, because we're talking about asana, postures that we're all doing in the name of yoga, and he's saying the way to do asana is to actually work with the mind, right? To lessen the natural tendency for restlessness, but that could be physical too, I guess, but by meditating on the infinite, which I think is about connecting with something bigger than us, right? It's quite poetic, isn't it? And then he says, thereafter, one is undisturbed by the dualities. And this duality is like the constant up and down of life, like pleasure and pain, good and bad, the constant struggle that we go through in life. And yoga takes us out of that struggle connecting us to something that's unchanging, eternal, and undisturbed, as he's saying here. All right, so let's look at chair yoga in particular. Here's another image of du jour doing chair. So some of the benefits of chair yoga is basically all the benefits of yoga, I'm going to say, can be found in chair yoga. And I think it's so obvious, but I guess I have to say it, right? That chair yoga is yoga. There's really almost no difference. Since if we look at those definitions that I just shared, like asana is about working with the mind. Yoga is a spiritual practice about connecting to a deeper part of ourselves. There's no reason why working on the chair or in the chair couldn't allow us access to those same experiences, right? And on top of that, chair yoga actually makes yoga available to a much broader population. So if you think about, the image of yoga that we have through the media or social media as like a very athletic practice, that might actually be an obstacle to people participating who look at those images of handstands and what I like to call big poses and think, oh my gosh, I'll never do that. And so this can shift the sense of who can practice. Like seeing images of chair yoga, I think makes yoga feel more welcoming and accessible. And I think that's huge because I think a lot of people are turned off by the image of yoga that's out there in the world. And then even by going to class, I mean, the other thing is some people want to do yoga. They might go to a class not really knowing much about it and end up in a class that's very intense with a very physical, quick mat class and feel like, oh, wow, this really isn't for me, or literally be told it's not for them, or have a negative experience and get injured, perhaps. And it's not that chair yoga is perfect, but I think that chair yoga offers just this much more accessible form of practice. Most people are comfortable sitting in a chair, and I want to say not everyone wants to do chair yoga, and that's fine. Not everything I offer in accessible yoga is necessarily for everyone. Accessibility is so individual, but I think it's kind of an orientation, right? It's a direction we can move towards. And chair yoga is really important in terms of that accessible orientation, that it's a platform or a format that is way more accessible than a mat practice. Most people spend part of their day in the chair anyway, at least in the West. And can be done almost anywhere. You don't need special clothing or special props, although today I'm going to show you a few props I'm going to use. I hope you just have a chair that you can practice in, and I'll talk a bit about that. There's also research on yoga in general, which shows that there's tremendous benefit to practice, and it feels like why not expand those benefits to populations that really need it? For example, older people that might not be comfortable getting on a mat, or disabled people, or people who just don't want to get on the mat. So current research shows that yoga reduces frailty in older adults. It can reduce anxiety, elevates mood, and can reduce symptoms of depression. It reduces stress, and it can improve sleep. Yeah, so I think why not find a way to share such powerful practices with more people? And of course, there are things to be aware of. So this slide says challenges of chair yoga, and there's some of the things I want to talk about briefly, which is that many chair yoga students have pre-existing conditions. So I just think that if you're a teacher of chair yoga or you want to, it's good to get a little bit of training or do some research on your own about some of those common conditions that people, especially older people, might have. I saw a comment about, it's like arthritis, for example, which is extremely common, or lower back issues, or osteoporosis, which is bone loss, again, is very common. Or maybe some basic information about heart disease and blood pressure, since heart disease is still the major killer of people around the world. So I would say it's helpful to learn about these kind of common conditions and understand what happens in the context of a chair yoga class that might be supportive or potentially dangerous for someone. And I think there's some controversy when I share about these concerns. I always get pushback because people say, well, you're putting negative thoughts out there, and it's like, what's that, like a nocebo effect. Nocebo is the opposite of a placebo effect, where so if you put a negative idea out there, it can have a negative response. And so I'm not saying that as a teacher, you should be verbalizing these things to your students, but if you're a teacher, it's important to be educated about potential issues so that you can keep your students safe. And I think safety is number one when you're teaching. Not only is ahimsa, or non-harm, the first teaching of yoga, but of course we don't want to hurt people, right? So yoga teachers, we want to help, we don't want to hurt people. So it's helpful to have some awareness of these concerns. One is that the pelvis is the grounding point, meaning that in a mat class, normally the feet are the grounding point, or potentially the seat, the pelvis, if you're sitting on the mat, or you're lying down, it's like the whole body. So in chair yoga, almost every position done in chair yoga, you have the pelvis as the main grounding point, where most of the body weight is on the pelvis. And what that means is that it's very stable. And stability is great, but also can cause other issues, because if you do a lot of movements from that stable pelvis position, you could put a lot of torque or tension on the lower back and the SI joint in particular, the sacroiliac joint, which is where the bottom of the sacrum connects to the pelvis. And yoga students and yoga teachers tend to have a lot of issues with their SI joint, but I just think it's something to be conscious of in chair yoga. So twists and asymmetrical poses in particular, you want to try to keep the spine and pelvis as one cohesive unit when you're moving. And I can show you a few tips when we do our practice in a minute. I'm going to try and stop talking in a minute. Also, the hips and knees are in flexion, meaning that there's already a bend, right? You can see in this picture of du jour that she's seated. That means her hips are flexed. Hip flexion is when the knees or the thighs have come towards the chest. And since you're already in flexion when you're seated, you really have to consider whether you need additional flexion in the hips. Also, sitting generally causes kind of a slouching posture. We tend to lose the lumbar curve when we sit. And so we have to be careful about spinal flexion as well. And especially if people have osteoporosis or bone loss, intense spinal flexion can be dangerous in that case. And then we can add more opportunities for hip extension, which would create the opposite movement from that seated posture, which we can do. And I'm going to show you, hopefully I'll show you a pose today where you get that kind of like a lunge position in a chair. Also, there's a tendency in chair yoga to only focus on the upper body, but I think we need to consciously work on the lower body, especially building strength. And so we can add strengthening practices, which are really great for people with osteoporosis. People that don't walk or don't walk very much tend to have osteoporosis. And so you can consciously build strengthening practices that potentially could build bone, even in chair yoga. And we'll do some strengthening practices today. And then you can bring in things like digestive massage, because a lot of asana that are done on the mat have that kind of digestive massage element, pressing the belly into the floor. That can be lost in the chair. And so to think about that in general, like the ways that the body tends to be massaging itself against the mat or against the hard ground, I think that we can recreate some of that in the chair with massage. So you can consider that, how to get some of that massage consciously back in a chair class. And keep it yoga, meaning like be sure to bring in this mental component of working with the mind. This meditative focus is maybe the most important thing we can do in chair yoga. So I think I'll leave it there, and then hopefully we'll have time at the end. I want to talk about teaching integrated classes, and I have another slide about that I'll share later. But why don't we do a practice now? I know there's some questions, but I'm going to try and take questions at the end. And maybe for now we can set yourself up for practice. I'm going to move back. Let's see. What I'd love for you to do is find a sturdy chair. Potentially, I mean, to me, my favorite chairs don't have arms, But if you do have arms, it's okay. If you have arms in your chair. I have my chair on a mat for added safety, but you don't have to. You could even have the back of the chair against the wall if you prefer that. You have to take a sip of water. Also, if your chair has wheels, you might want to lock the wheels. That could happen if you're using a wheelchair or an office chair. Sometimes the wheels will move around, and it could basically be a little bit dangerous. I also have a cushion on my on the seat of my chair because my legs are longer, and I wanted to create some more height. What we're looking for is a position where the hips and the knees are about the same height, or maybe the knees are slightly lower. If your legs are shorter, you might want to place a blanket under your feet. That can elevate your feet and lift them up a little higher. It can also be softer. And then a few more things about the starting position. Excuse me. So one is that to pay attention to your back. If you have the strength in your back to hold yourself up without support, then see if you can sit forward in the chair and with a nice tall spine. But if you don't have that muscular strength, you can always scoot back against the back of a chair and use the back to help you lift you taller. You could even place a blanket behind you to create a little lumbar support. Again, that's if you need the support of the back of a chair to hold you up. The other thing to look at is your leg position. One of the challenges in chair yoga is that people, if you're teaching it, let's say, you might find that students could fall out of their chair. So you want to find a really firm foundation with the legs a little wider than hip width and the feet a little more forward of the knees. It basically just creates a really firm foundation so that if we do any forward bending, the weight of the body won't fall out of the chair. All right, so check in with that, finding a comfortable posture. And then what I would do if I was teaching a class with you is I would check in with all of you. And since I can't really see you all here, I'm going to ask you to really take care of yourself. I'm going to put the responsibility back on you to pay attention to how you feel as we do the practice. If something doesn't feel right, you can adapt it for yourself or not do it. Of course, you can always stop at any time. And then see if you can turn your awareness within again. Maybe connecting with the breath if that's comfortable for you. Feeling the exhalation grounding you into the chair and into the floor. And the inhalation lifting and lengthening you up. Take one more breath like that. And then we'll do some movements. You can start with the neck. I'm going to do some gentle neck rolls. Inhale, lengthening the spine. Exhale, lower the chin down and then slowly roll the head to the right. Going as far as you comfortably can and then slowly lower back down. And then see if you can coordinate the breath here. So you can maybe inhale to the left, rolling like a half circle or a pendulum. Exhaling back down. Inhale to the other side. And exhale back down. It's nice to coordinate the breath and the movement when you're doing warm-ups. Okay, one more time. To the left and then lower the head down. And when you come back to center, raise the head. So inhale, squeeze the shoulders up to the ears and exhale, release with a loud sigh. Ah. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. Ah. And you can shake out the arms and shake out the hands a little bit. And let's bring the awareness to the spine. We could do a gentle cat-cow. So again, I'm going to say gentle at first, and then see how, if it feels comfortable, you can go a little further. So gently would mean gently rounding the back, lower the head. Again, that's creating more spinal flexion. So be sure that's comfortable for you. Inhale, chest forward, chin lifts. Exhale, rounding again. And keep going with the breath. Inhale, cow. Belly and chest forward, chin lifting. Exhale, cat. Meow. And then I'm going to bring in my arms here to make it a little bit deeper. So now as I come out into cow, I'm going to bring my elbows back and the palms facing up. Create a little bit deeper stretch in my chest and shoulders. And then on the exhale, reach the hands forward, turn the hands down, and stretch the arms away. See if that feels good for you. So inhale, arms back, chest lifted. Exhale, reaching out, palms down, stretching the shoulders and the spine. One more time. If that's comfortable for you, you're inhaling and then exhaling, rounding. And come back to neutral spine. Release the arms. Notice how you feel. We can work on the hips a little bit. Maybe we could hug the knees in. So hugging the right knee into the chest, holding the leg anywhere that's comfortable for you. Give a little squeeze, maybe rocking the leg a little bit. And then I want to try to make a circle with this knee. So if it's comfortable, beginning to move the knee in a big circle in either direction, getting movement in my hip joint. So this is a ball and socket joint, right? And you can rotate there. And then twist, switch.
Yeah. Okay. David got to Columbus. Okay. Brenda sent me a text. We made it safe.
Okay. Hopefully you can all stay muted. All right. So you're making circles in the opposite direction. And then you can release that leg and we'll do the other side. First, giving a squeeze. Can rock the leg a little bit side to side. And actually, if you feel pressure of the leg against the belly, that's good. That's that massage we're talking about. Creating a little digestive massage there. And then making a circle with the knees. And you can use the hand on the knee to help you if you want. So if the leg, that's the other thing, if people have had stroke or have paralysis, you can use the arms to move the legs, which is fine, if it feels comfortable. Or you could actually create more resistance and make it more challenging if you place the hand on the top of the knee and press the knee away. Let's go the opposite direction. Okay, and then release the leg. Notice how you're feeling. We can do some hip walking. So I'm already kind of doing it. Hip walking is where we're going to scoot all the way to the back of the chair and then forward. So again, this is if you have the mobility in your lower body, you can lift one hip and scoot it back and then switch to that and then kind of lean to the other side, scoot the other side back. So you're basically moving your pelvis slowly back and back and back and then coming forward, hip walking forward, scooting yourself forward. See if that's comfortable for you. If you don't feel like you get that movement, if you don't have that kind of mobility in the hips, what you could do is you could lean the body side to side instead. So hip walking back and forth on the seat of the chair, or leaning the body weight back and forth if you prefer. Just be careful you don't fall. Okay. And then we can do some something for the feet. I thought we could do two things. One is marching in place. So for people who sit a lot, it's great to get some, to stimulate circulation in the legs. You can march in place, which means it could be a few different ways. One is lifting one foot up, lower down, lift the other up, lower down, marching like this. Now, if that's not comfortable for you, or you don't have the strength in the legs, you can use your hands to do it. You can lift one leg and drop it down. Marching in place. If it feels like too much, you could also come up onto the toes. Lift one heel, drop it down. Lift one heel, drop it down. Marching in place just by lifting and lowering the heel, dropping it to the floor. And the pressure of your heel against the floor is good for the circulation of blood in your lower legs. And lymph fluid too, blood and lymph. I was just saying the other day in a class that, your calf muscle is called your second heart because it actually holds a lot of blood in it. And it's great to circulate that blood through the body. All right. And then release that. One other thing we can do with our feet is what I call like a foot stretch. I'm going to use a block for this. So if you have a block, you might want to grab it. If not, you can do it without, but the block will add additional stretch. So start with the right foot, and the heel is on the block, the toes coming off of it, point my toes, and then flex my foot. Now, if this causes cramping, just stop, don't do it, or massage that foot, or do it very subtly. Trying to get some more movement in that foot. If that's comfortable, you could also try having your toes on the block with the heel off and go the other way, stretching the heel down and up. And the other option here is you can massage your foot against the edge of the block, massaging, putting some pressure into the arch of your foot, if you like. All right, and let's switch sides. You can also do this facing stairs. Like if you don't have blocks, you can do this facing a step. Let's try coordinating the breath. I'm going too fast. So you can inhale one way, exhale the other. I should have started that way, right? So you're doing at least some movements with the heel on the block, the toes coming off, and some movements with the toes on the block, the heel coming off. Okay, and when you're done, you can place the block to the side. Notice how you're doing. Now we could try a strengthening practice. This is strengthening for the legs and for the core muscles. We could do a boat pose, lifting one leg at a time. So I think it's important in chair yoga to prioritize safety. So we're going to keep one foot down. And what you can do, let's start with the left leg down. I'm going to lift the right foot off the floor. I'm going to use my hands and hold the back of my right thigh, lifting the leg up in the air. Sitting up nice and tall, inhale, lengthen the spine, and then exhale, leaning back slightly and beginning to straighten the right leg. So I'm holding it with my arms, and I can stay there. Or, again, going only as far as you want. You can release the arms, try and hold the leg out without holding. It's up to you. See what feels best for you. Breathing. And notice where you feel this. If you can feel it in the thigh and also maybe deep in the psoas muscle, which is that deepest muscle that connects from the lower back to the inner thigh. And then slowly lower that foot down. And try the other side. So taking hold of the left leg. Inhale, sitting up nice and tall. Exhale, leaning back and extend the left foot. Straightening the left leg, holding with the hands. Or if you want to try releasing, notice how that feels. I don't really recommend raising both feet at the same time. I mean, some people can do it, but it feels a little bit dangerous, like you might fall out of the chair, and I don't really want that to happen. So, I mean, I think this is pretty effective, actually, doing one leg at a time. Okay, and then when you're ready, does it feel like it was the same amount of time on both sides? You can release. Take a breath. You can do some side bending. Side bending is surprisingly calming. Let's take the right hand, place it on the top of the left thigh towards the hips. And then take the left hand and reach up just as high as you can. You could have the hand on the elbow or on the shoulder, lift the elbow, or bring the arm all the way overhead, whatever works for you. Inhale, lengthen up, and exhale, bend to the right slightly. And you're kind of hold yourself with your right hand so you don't fall to the side. See if you can find a position where you create some space on the left side of your body. And there's a slight rotation, maybe the left shoulder moving back slightly. Good. And then exhale, release to the other side. Left hand is on the right hip. Inhale, right arm up as high as you can comfortably go without straining. And the other thing to remember is that more isn't better. I think we have this tendency, it's just maybe human nature, to think that more is better. But in a sense, what we're doing in yoga is, remember what was Patanjali saying about asana? Meditating on the infinite, working to reduce those natural tendencies for restlessness. Okay, let's release that side. We can do a similar movement. I like to call this one the Trikonasa, I'm going to widen my stance. I'm bringing the feet wider than my mat, but as wide as you comfortably can, actually. So a nice wide stance. You can have the toes pointed away too. That works. And then I'm going to rotate my torso to the left and take my right forearm and place it on my right thigh. Checking in on my low back here, really make sure that it feels okay. And then raise the left arm again as high as you want. You can bring the hand to the shoulder or bring the arm overhead. Working on lengthening the side body again. Just taking a breath or two there. Feeling the left shoulder lifting up a little higher. And coming out, inhale up, exhale, release. So we can do the other side, twisting the torso to the left a little bit. Left forearm down, right arm overhead. Just wherever it feels good for you. Lengthening on the right side. And taking a few breaths there. And then exhale, release. Now, we have this nice wide leg position. I want to see if you can rotate to the right. So keeping the legs apart, you're going to turn to the right. I'm going to have to step them so that you still have that wide leg position. You have the right leg, my right leg is going out to the right of my chair, which is why it's great not to have arms in the chair. And my left leg is in front. Okay, see how that feels. Nice sturdy pose. From here, we can do a bunch of things. I like to use this for most standing, like open hip, like a warrior two. So you can come into a warrior two here. You can rotate, if it's comfortable, rotate your torso to the left and extend the arms out at shoulder height. Looking over the right hand. Take a breath there. And you can come into reverse warrior. We can do a little flow, rotating the right hand up, inhale, stretch up. The left hand comes to the seat of the chair. Exhale, back to warrior two. Inhale, right forearm to right thigh, arm overhead, like a side angle. And exhale, back to warrior two. Let's do that one more time. So inhale, right hand up, left hand down. And exhale, right forearm down, left arm up. And inhale back up to warrior two. Release the arms, and let's rotate to the other side. So moving all the way to the left. And if that doesn't work for you, if you can't move in the chair so easily, you can still do the arm position. So rotating the torso to the right now, arms extended in line with that left leg, looking over the left hand. Take a breath here. And then palm up, inhale, stretch up with the left hand, right hand down. And exhale back to warrior two. Inhale, left forearm and the left thigh, right arm overhead. And exhale back to warrior two. And one more time, inhale, left hand up, right hand down. And exhale back. Left arm down, inhale. Stretch the right arm overhead. And exhale back to warrior two. And then release the arms. Now, let's leave the legs here for a moment. While they're apart, we can do a twist. So I'm going to take advantage of this wide leg position to twist to the left. And I think by keeping the legs apart, what I'm going to do is not engage my lower back, right? So inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, twist to the left. And I'm not using the hands to force anything. I'm going to rest the hand. Right hand is resting on my left knee. Left arm is kind of resting on the back of the chair in a very relaxed way. Inhale, lengthening the spine, using my back muscles to do the work here. Twisting the head gently. Taking another breath here. Inhale, lengthening up. Exhale, twisting with hardly any force. And then exhale, release. Come back to center. And let's go back to the right side again. So that nice wide leg position. Right leg to the right, left leg in front. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, gently rotating with the left hand resting on the right knee. Really resting. Right hand resting on the back of the chair. Inhale, lengthening the spine. Exhale, twisting gently. Again, I find it's really important to not use the arms to force the twist. Right? Let the back muscles do the work. You're strengthening them that way. One more exhale and release. Come back to center. Bring that right leg forward so you're facing forward in the chair again. Notice how you're doing. Maybe we could do one last pose. We could do a child's pose. I'm going to show it with a bolster, but you could do this without. So I'm going to show you, there's probably endless ways to do this pose in the chair. If you have a bolster or something like this, you can bring it between your legs. I'm actually going to put it on top of a block to make it even taller because I'm kind of tall. In front of my legs, my knees apart. So again, a wide position with my legs, nice and sturdy, because I'm going to lean forward. So then place the elbows on the thighs towards the knees, hold the bolster in place. Inhale, lengthen the spine, and exhale, rest your forehead on the end of the bolster. And again, if you don't have a bolster, a way you could do this is interlacing the fingers and resting the forehead on the sides of the thumbs, or have the ends of the thumbs gently massaging the inner eyebrow area. So find one that works for you. Taking a few breaths, make sure you feel length in the spine, space to breathe. It's nice to rest the forehead on something. It can be very calming for the nervous system. And then coming out slowly, inhale, sit back up. You can rest back in Shavasana for a very brief Shavasana. So you can have your feet up on that bolster if you have one, or simply rest back in the chair if you don't. One of the things I always like to show people in Shavasana is you can take a blanket and fold it in a long way, and then roll it up to make like a scarf. This is basically creates support for the neck. So if you happen to have a blanket, you could do that. But if not, it's okay. You can lean back in the chair. Bring the feet out. Shavasana is not very restful in the chair. Often it's hard to get very comfortable. So you can keep it relatively short. And just take a few breaths and maybe do a body scan, which means bringing a neutral or loving awareness to the body, starting down at the feet. Noticing without criticizing or judging, feet and the legs, the thighs and the hips, into the buttocks and the pelvis, the abdomen. Bring your awareness up into the chest. And then bring awareness to the hands and the arms and shoulders. Awareness to the back of your body, the lower back, middle back, and upper back. Noticing your whole spine, all the way up to the neck, the throat, jaw, the mouth, tongue and cheeks, nose and eyes, forehead, whole head. Just allow the whole body to be in your awareness for a moment. And bring your awareness to your breath. And then notice the mind itself. See if there's any thoughts or emotions or images that are there, and just let them move through. Spending another moment here, connecting a little more deeply. Then coming up, we're going to slowly wake the body. If you want to stretch a little bit, hands and feet. Taking a deep inhale, sitting up a little taller. You can remove the blanket unless you liked it. And let's sit for just maybe 2 minutes, doing some breathing and meditation. For the breathing practice, I thought we could do Ujjayi breath, which is where we have throat control. So the glottis, which closes whenever you swallow, you can control it by making a little whispering sound in the throat. You might know Ujjayi already. You can practice if you do, but otherwise we'll do it on the exhale. So you can inhale deeply with a relaxed throat, And then exhale, making a little bit of like a whispering sound as you exhale. Try that a few times. See if you can notice Ujjayi on the exhale, slowing the breath down. So we're going to inhale, relaxed breath. Exhale with Ujjayi, long, slow Ujjayi. Because you're making the opening a little smaller, and that allows the breath to leave more slowly. Just try a couple more times. If it's comfortable, if you don't like it, it's fine. You don't have to do it. You can do some deep breathing instead. Deep inhale with a relaxed throat and exhale with Ujjayi. Feeling just a very gentle amount of pressure in the throat to create that whispering sound. Then after the next exhale, relax the throat, relax the breath. Notice how just doing 1 minute of Ujjayi has made you feel. Sometimes lengthening the exhalation that way stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side. And we can just spend a moment in meditation. Bring the awareness to something. You can observe the breath. You could use a mantra like Om, or you can use a visual meditation by focusing on something, staring at a spot in front of you. So you can choose an object that works for you, and let's just spend the next few seconds focusing on that object. And if the mind wanders, gently bring it back. And take a deep inhale. And you can bring the palms together at the chest, and I'm going to do a little mantra for you. This is a traditional mantra, Loka Samasta, that means may all beings everywhere be at peace. I'll chant it 3 times. First time you can chant it with me for yourself, second time for your community, and third time sending it out to anyone in the world who's suffering. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you. Okay, thanks. We have a couple of minutes left. Thanks for practicing with me. I know there were questions, and I also had another topic. I don't know if there's time really for that today. Maybe we could spend a minute on it, which was I did want to talk about integrating chairs in a mat class. So maybe I'll just spend 5 minutes, if you don't mind, on that. Is that okay, Elena? Did you have questions?
There's a few questions, but I think we can, that's good content. That's a good thing to cover. And anybody who's already asked a question, they can watch the replay if they have to run before you get to answer their question.
Yeah, and I can stay a little longer.
Cool.
And you might have to have me back.
Oh no.
Okay, let me see if I can share this one slide. So I do teach this technique in all my trainings, and so you always can join me at a training if you want to spend more time on this. This is what for yoga teachers, what I would call integrated teaching. This is where we integrate people practicing in chairs into a mat-based yoga class. Because the ideal for me in accessible yoga is that we start teaching mixed groups where everyone is different, has different abilities. And in order to do that, I think we have to gain some skills. And so the skill that I teach is really summarized in this first line here, which is prepare separately, practice together. And I might just leave you with that today, which is just my suggestion if you want to teach integrated classes is actually, rather than teaching a mat form of a practice and then a chair form of a practice, you teach them together by building the foundation separately, right? So you can prepare separately. So I'd say, okay, in the chair, you can move your legs to this position. On the mat, you can prepare in this position. And now together, let's all move into this pose together. And so you find some common movements. You're starting with the foundation and building up. And of course, if it's too complicated, you can just breathe together. And I know that's kind of a big idea, but I had said in this webinar, I realized later I had said I would share this concept with you. And I know it's a lot, but I would suggest try it out, see what works. If you're a yoga teacher, you have mixed classes, you might be doing it already. It's something that I think a lot of teachers come to over time. But I just love the idea of not having to separate people in classes, and even within a class, they're not having to separate them, right? They don't have to say, okay, you do this and you do that, but rather, well, you prepare like this, you prepare like that, but then let's see what happens together. What is the common experience that's happening in this pose? Like if I'm teaching Cobra pose in the mat, in the chair, I might say, okay, on the mat, lie on the belly, hands on under the shoulders, forehead on the floor. In the chair, I could say, bring the hands onto the knees, lean forward. And everyone then together, exhale, ground down, inhale, lengthen the chin, slowly raise up the head, neck, and chest. And so it's like there's this common experience that's happening of Cobra, even though there might be people doing it differently on the mat and the chair. And I think that's just a beautiful thing in general to think about as a yoga teacher, which is to create opportunities for everyone to do an individual practice within the group setting. And I think it can take a little time and a little work as a teacher to build towards that. But it's like what do you call it? It's like a spectrum. I call it a spectrum of possibility that exists through each yoga practice, right? That rather than thinking of a practice as having an ideal or full expression of a pose, I think that's misleading. There's benefit to be had at every version of a pose, every state of that pose. In fact, there's less benefit if the person is doing the version that's not right for them. There's actually harm that could occur. So actually the benefit of the pose comes when you're doing the pose, the version of the pose that's right for you. So I kind of think thinking individually, right? But working as a group is the key. Okay, I know that was very fast, but I wanted to get it in. Yeah, and I have some ideas. I do have a new book. Let's see, do I have my book? The Teacher's Guide to Accessible Yoga. I guess I'll just pitch that for a minute. That this book, I basically cover most of the things I talked about today. Talk about the benefits of chair yoga, about teaching in an accessible way, about integrating classes. Okay, so Elena, are you keeping track of the questions, or should I just look through here?
I am keeping track of questions. So shall we start at the beginning?
Sure.
Awesome. So the first question asked was from Amber Lee. Do you get clients that are paraplegic or soldiers who have been wounded in war?
Yes, for sure. I've taught many different people. I mean, I don't even know. I've been teaching, next year it'll be 30 years that I've been teaching accessible yoga to every different population I can imagine. There are communities that do this more than others. There's a great group called Fierce Calm, and he's now teaching in Ukraine to people that are survivors, like veterans who are surviving the war. And most of his students are amputees or people who've been, have injuries from war. He's doing such great work. So, I mean, there's so many groups like that. Also for, I would say for wheelchair users in particular, my friend Rodrigo Souza is such an incredible teacher. He'll be offering a program through the Accessible Yoga School, which I ran. He'll be doing a mentorship program with like monthly sessions for teachers. And he uses a wheelchair himself. And he has a back injury, I think, from a fall. And he talks about how yoga really changed his life, and he now shares yoga with with everyone, but focuses on other wheelchair users. Ali Hopa Yoga is his Instagram handle. Ali Hopa, maybe I can. Ali Hopa Yoga, I think, on Instagram. All right. I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. All right. Next question is from Annabelle. She says, I'll be subbing a 45-minute chair yoga very soon. I've been told the community likes a challenge and not to keep it all gentle because they feel even more limited with so many modifications. How can I deliver a mindful practice while helping yogis feel empowered and strong?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question because I want to say, to me, accessible yoga or chair yoga does not mean gentle. I mean, I don't use the term gentle yoga because I actually think that this practice should meet you where you are. And, you know, for some people, if you have limited mobility, then what looks like small movement could be very challenging. And it's okay. I don't think we're there to judge that. We're there to serve people where they're at. And I think this question that you're asking applies for every yoga teacher in every yoga class all the time, which is how do you serve your students and give them a practice that will offer them strengthening, flexibility, a meditative inward experience, and help them achieve whatever goal they're looking for. I think that's the challenge of being a yoga teacher. And there's really no difference to me in this case with chair yoga. The same thing applies. I think sometimes, though, I think, as I mentioned during the class today, that we do have this mindset that more is better. And I think that's a problem. I think sometimes students come in with this idea that they have to do big poses to get benefit. And I just don't think that's true. So I think as a chair yoga teacher or accessible yoga teacher, you have an opportunity to educate people about what yoga is and to really emphasize the fact that sometimes I say less is more, that more subtle is more powerful in yoga. What we're actually doing in yoga is getting quiet and still. And sometimes we need to make big movements with the body in order to get quiet after. But in a sense, the bigger movements are actually just preparation for the stillness. So sometimes we have to share that message too somehow. And it can be hard. You know, not everyone is ready for that or wants that message, but you know, do your best. Okay.
I was muted, sorry.
Okay.
So the next question is from Maria, and she says, I would like to know how to modify poses for chairs that have arms.
Yeah.
I teach to a corporate client over Zoom, and many employees have office chairs and have a hard time with lower body poses as a result.
Yeah, that's the problem. I actually think you hit the nail on the head. It's hard to get lower body activation if you can't turn to the side. There's so much benefit in turning to the side in a chair. You could do a lunge, which I realized I didn't do today, but you could bring one leg back, and that offers hip extension, which is often missing in chair yoga. But I would say, you know, you do the best you can of what you have, and that's always the case. If there are arms on the chair, you can still do movements with the legs. One pose I almost did today was chair, like doing chair pose in the chair, where you put weight into the feet and lean forward and still stay seated. You could also scoot forward in the seat of the chair and bring the legs under the chair, maybe one at a time, to create a little bit of hip extension that way. We have to be careful people don't fall forward. Also with chair yoga, you can mix it with standing practice. I mean, it's not like you have to stay in the chair. If the students can stand, you can do a combination of chair and then standing, using the chair for balance or working at the wall. You could also bring a chair up to a wall. So there's a lot you could do with a chair facing a wall, like downward dog can be great, facing a wall, sitting in a chair, or cobra or something like that. There's a lot of things we could do with the wall. And another thought I had, similarly, another great combination class is chair and bed, or chair couch, I like to call it, where you sit up for a while and then recline for part of the class. If someone is working, you know, from home, or if they have access to somewhere they can lay down, it can be really nice, because shavasana in the chair is not so great. It can be nice to mix that up. So yeah, good luck with that one.
Awesome. Okay, next question is from Elissa.
Hey, Alyssa.
I teach a yoga class in a gym to a mixed group, including older, healthy, and fit adults. Everyone can practice from the mat with props and adaptations. I've also taught exclusively chair yoga an exclusive chair yoga class, exclusively chair yoga class, I apologize, in another gym. When I advocate for the addition of chairs to my current class, in order to be more inclusive, or request to teach a chair yoga class, I encounter resistance from the gym owner. How can we overcome the stigma associated with and rejection of mixed or chair yoga classes?
Yeah. That's why I'm here today. You know, I think we have to just keep talking about it and showing people and asking them to try it out. And I think people are really surprised when they take chair yoga and they realize, wow, this is actually challenging and different. And I can access different physical experiences than I even can on the mat. And so I would just say, be the example, you know, just share your love of chair yoga, bring chairs into every class. Even if you have a class that's a mat class, just bring out the chairs. Like if they're around, bring them into the space. Give everyone a chair, even if they're not using them, just to start making it like to normalize it. I think it's important to do that. The other thing you can do is what I thought you were going to ask from the beginning of that question. I thought you were going to ask about students who resist, because sometimes students think that they're not really doing yoga if they're practicing in a chair. And so I sometimes say that, you know, it's important as a teacher that you demonstrate from a chair. Because if you show, oftentimes in a class, the students want to copy the teacher. And so if the teacher is doing the practice in the chair, they think, oh, wow, that's the practice I need to be doing. But if you're doing the mat, they're going to try to copy what you're doing. The other thing you could do is you could have a class, if it's a mixed class, you could start with everyone in the chair and say, we'll just do a few poses in the chair and have everyone experience it. And then say, now you can get out of the chair if you want. You kind of give them an option to do both. But I think we all need to work harder at, what's the word, destigmatizing chair yoga. I think it really does have some weird stigma attached. Okay.
Awesome. All right, next one is from Nicola. Any suggestions for those that can't get their foot on top of their knee for seated pigeon? Also, I have a few people with frozen shoulders who come to my class and can't raise their arm. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, for a pigeon, you know, you could also straighten the supporting leg and have the bent leg lower down on it. I can show you maybe really fast. So like you could do a pigeon. Oh, you can't really see what I'm doing. First of all, one thing I'll say is that you can do all the poses in your mind, and that's the most advanced way to do it. So if you can mentally practice, that's really the challenge. But you could potentially, instead of doing a pigeon like this, you could have the leg straight and lower the leg, the other bent leg on there. So then it doesn't cause as much external rotation in that hip of the bent leg. Or you could have the bent leg foot resting on another block. You're out here to make it more gentle, which can be nice, or on a second chair. And for frozen shoulder, I would just say, only go as far as they need to go. Like there's really not, I don't think it's something that you want to get too caught up in. People should move. I mean, assuming you're a yoga teacher and not a physical therapist, I would just say I wouldn't try to fix them. I would just allow them to do what feels comfortable for them, because we have to remember our scope of practice, right? Which is what we're like legally and ethically trained to do. And so finding adaptations, rather than raising arms, you can bring the hands to the shoulders and only lift the arms a little bit. That could be something. Okay.
Awesome. So next question. Holly asks, any recommendations on how to market chair yoga online to make it enticing for business people who are stuck at a desk all day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great place. Just share all you can. I think a sample is great. You know, I try not to teach for free, but it's like to do a sample for free is usually a good thing to do. And then if they like it, you can charge them. So I think giving away samples is really great. Or you can give them a video of your class and see if they like it. It can help with stress. It can make them more efficient. I mean, you can actually show them the research, honestly. Research the benefits of yoga, and then it's incredible. it is really incredible what's happening, especially I would say the last like 5 years, there's just tremendous amount of research on yoga, and the benefits are really incredible. Yes.
Awesome.
Actually, I'll say one thing. We're having a marketing course at the Accessible Yoga School coming up with Tristan Katz, if people are interested in marketing. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Tristan is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Joan has a question. She's wondering if you can speak to like an actual yoga sequence that you could teach in a chair and for people on a mat without keeping the class separate. She said she tried teaching this today and found the class was a little distracted.
I mean, that is the big challenge. And I try, I shared that one slide just now about, prepare separately, practice together. I would say I go into that in detail in my trainings and in my books. Like, I don't know what else to say in the context of this short time here, but that's a technique I use. It's not great in a flowing sequence, but if you're teaching more of a traditional like hatha style, it works really well. You just have to prepare yourself. Like, think which poses will be easy to do both on the chair and the mat simultaneously. What am I going to be teaching? Like, think of the version you want to teach in the chair and the version you want to teach on the mat, and only teach that one version of each. Find the common, or first prepare them separately. Think about what's the difference with the foundation of the pose, because it's going to be different. Teach those separately. So you could say on the chair, you could start with this. On the mat, you start with this. And then together, we have these common movements, right? Something is happening. There's some common experience of this pose that you can find. So I would just say, keep at it.
Awesome. All right. Next question. Is from Jennifer. Those with osteoporosis and kyphosis. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Just don't seem to be able to do extended side angle on the chair safely, as it would lead to more of a forward bend than the intended side reach. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I would say make it smaller. Just make it a smaller movement. One of the things that I often describe for adapting practice is break it down. So if you think about a pose, you can break it down into little parts, right? Like, this is what the shoulder is doing. This is what the spine is doing. This is what the hip's doing. This is what the legs are doing. And those can be all taught as separate practices. Sometimes it can be too many actions happening at once, and it can confuse people on a physical level. Like, they actually don't know how to do that one thing. So maybe think about what it is you want them to do and just focus on that, just the arm movement. And it can be done seated, upright, rather than bending to the side. Work on moving the arms or something. So I guess I'd say simplify, break it down more. Don't worry about how it looks. Don't worry about what the full pose looks like. Just let that go. Just think about what the students would benefit from. Maybe they don't even need that pose. Maybe they could focus on something else, lifting, lengthening, creating space, gentle back bend. I think the challenge with kyphosis, which is a deep curve in the upper back, is creating back bends that actually access the thoracic or middle spine rather than always the neck. Because what people do when they have a kyphosis, which is a rounded upper back, is they tend to focus on cervical extension, right? They just move their head. And so the challenge is, can you keep your head and cervical spine neutral and get some kind of lift in the thoracic area? Like, that's the key for me with someone who's working with kyphosis, and strengthening the chest muscles, I think could be helpful. But again, that's maybe more detail than I should be getting into. I know we're way over. Is that okay?
I don't there's just a couple more questions left. Okay. So if we can just cover them quick. If it's good with you, it's good with me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Emma asks, is Yoga Nidra safe online in a chair, or should we just always encourage people to lie back more so in a lounge or lying down?
I mean, it depends what you're teaching as Yoga Nidra. There's a lot of different practices that are all called Yoga Nidra. I would say that it's important that people don't fall out of their chair. And so part of that is not falling asleep. So I actually keep my Yoga Nidra practice in a chair to more of what I think of as Shavasana, just like a few minutes of rest. I have had students fall out of their chair. I've had students fall asleep and almost fall out of their chair. Or just make sure they're in a position that they won't fall. So if they're really leaning back, you could even have the back of the chair against the wall, their head resting against the wall, maybe with a blanket. That's a way more supportive position. So if someone does fall asleep, they're less likely to actually fall out of the chair. So that's really my concern about it, is just make sure they're safe, you know.
Yes. All right. And the final question is from Sarah. I teach yoga to adults with disabilities, including some students who are chair users, and it's wonderful to see them share experiences. Just wondering if there's a more chair-based yoga I can offer to assist some of my students who have diabetes, feet and ankle issues I take some focus on, but any others, and thyroid too, if you can.
I mean, I think that part of that question to me, I feel like we're getting into yoga therapy. Like, you know, you really have to think about what, again, your scope of practice. Maybe you are a yoga therapist. I am a yoga therapist, but in the context of this conversation, I feel like we're really talking about yoga teaching, which is like a different scope than yoga therapy. But I would say, even though I say that, I actually think yoga can assist with those things. And I don't know if we can really pull out what are the elements of yoga that are helping. Like it's a holistic practice. So, you know, is it meditation? Is it breathing practice? Is it the asanas themselves? Or is it the whole thing? You know, maybe nervous system regulation that can help people with diabetes. But I actually do think there's some research about yoga for diabetes. I would say, Google it. Honestly, like look up articles and teachers that are doing that work, like yoga for diabetes, and see what you find. I think there's a book, Yoga for Diabetes. I think is what it's called, if I'm not mistaken. Evan Sorkin is coming to my mind. It's a really great book. Anyway, just maybe look up that book, Yoga for Diabetes, and see if that helps. Although you also mentioned feet and ankles, and I would say yes, like sometimes those are lost in chair yoga. We only tend to focus on the upper body. It might be because some chair yoga students don't have movement or paralyzed in their lower body. But I think it's important, if they do have movement, that you engage. Even if they don't have movement, that you engage the lower part of the body as well, just to create kind of a holistic full body experience. Anyway, hope that's useful. Good luck, Sarah.
All right. Let's see. There may be one final question.
I mean, I would just encourage people to come take a training with me. Honestly, I think you have great questions. There's only so much I can cover here. I mean, it's been a little bit over an hour, but you know, I actually offer just a chair yoga training. It'll be probably in August, and you can go to accessibleyogaschool.com and sign up for a interest list where you get information about that chair yoga training. But then I also do I think that one's like maybe 12 hours or something. But then I also do a 40-hour accessible yoga training, which is actually way more detailed and looks into all different aspects of accessibility. So yeah, I hope that I can feel your enthusiasm and great questions. And I just think that is really important. And I hope that you'll pursue this study, this work that you're doing already, or this area of interest. It makes me just really happy to see that you're interested and excited. And thanks again for to offering Tree. I saw someone asked about my sound. I have a Rode mic, and let's see. Hold up my book again. Oh, coming to Scotland. I actually am coming to London. Here's my book, The Teacher's Guide to Accessible Yoga. I also have two other books, Accessible Yoga and Yoga Revolution. Yeah, there's a link to the school, Accessible Yoga School. But someone mentioned Scotland. I am coming to London in May. Wow, thanks so much, everyone.
Awesome. And just so you all know, a replay of this will be sent out to everybody. And there will be additional links in that email with like where you can find Jivana, more about the Accessible Yoga School, some stuff like that. So this wasn't your last opportunity to get some of those little bits and pieces of information.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Elena. Thanks, Offering Tree. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Awesome.
See you
Thank
later.
you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.